Welcome to the new Camtasia Studio. We encourage you to watch and play with this Getting Started project video to learn some of the most important concepts of using the editor. If you want more in-depth tutorials that will walk you through the entire process of recording, editing, and sharing your videos, then please watch the Getting Started tutorials using this link under the Help menu.
Hopefully you got your brain dump out of the way, and
the editor is
all of
divided
those
up into
things
three
that you're
main
stressing
areas:
about this week, or you're
the
excited
clip
about this
bin,
week,
the timeline, and the canvas.
whatever's on your mind.
The canvas is where you see your
It's
video
now on
during
paper, so you don't have to think about it.
and can move, resize,
So
and
starting,
reposition
hopefully all of
media
you started your
however you
writing
want.
log this week.
The timeline is
If
where
you didn't,
assemble
you don't
and
have to
edit
tell
your
me
video.
now,
At the
because
top of the
I'm
timeline,
not,
tick marks represent
I'm not your
time in
mom or
terms
your
of
teacher
minutes
or
and
any of those
seconds.
things, but
When building
I
a
will tell you,
video,
you will get a
you'll work in
lot more
horizontal
out
manner,
of these
beginning from the
sessions
left
if you do
and
start
moving
logging your
sequentially
writing.
through time toward the
So
right.
keep that in mind.
The tracks
Are
are layered on top of each other. So media
Are
you
there any
add on higher
questions?
tracks is viewed
I
on
don't
top
know
of
where it
media on lower tracks in the canvas. For example, this callout is placed on top of the video
how do I
track
get
on the
Camtasia back
timeline,
up?
and therefore is on top of the screen video on the canvas.
Okay.
If I drag the video track on top
Thank y'all
of the
for
callout on the timeline,
working with
the
us.
callout is now
So
hidden
any
behind
questions
the
about
video
your
on
writing
the
log?
canvas.
Anything you ran into? Anything
Use the
you
zoom
were
slider
wondering?
to magnify the view of the
anything
timeline.
was
This is very
confusing?
helpful when making precise cuts and selections, like removing ums
Yes.
in your audio.
Anything. But
New media can be dragged and dropped on an existing track,
So we're supposed
or
to
a
be
new track is
practicing
automatically created when media is dropped at this
really
location
professional
at the
academic
top of the
writing, or just
timeline.
basically trying to get your thoughts down.
To change
Get
the
your thoughts
position
down.
of a clip on the timeline,
Get
just
your
drag
thoughts
it.
Cool.
To change the duration of a clip, drag the edges in either direction.
I started blogging all my
An
time
important
at
part of the
whole,
timeline is the
like,
playhead.
total work
To
Good.
view your
chart
video,
thing
click
that I
play.
think you would actually show
Notice
on
how the
my
video
computer
and the
because
timeline's
it's
playhead
clear
stay
to
in
use all
sync.
my time going graphically.
Click anywhere along the timeline and the playhead moves
good.
to
I'm
that
glad
point.
you like that. That was
To
actually
remove a
something that
portion
had
of your
nothing to
video,
do with
make
the
a
writing
selection with
training
the
that I
green
went
in
to.
point and red
It
out
was in a
point.
productivity training that I
Then
saw.
click the cut
And
button.
so
If you don't want media
So
cut on a
I
specific
just,
track,
it was one of those
just
things
click
that
the
it
lock
worked
icon.
so well with my writing
If you make
because
a
I could
mistake
transfer
while
it back
editing,
and forth
press Ctrl-Z on the
and
keyboard
see
to
what I'm doing and
undo,
not doing. And days
or
when you're
choose
like
Edit Undo.
feeling unsuccessful, then you look and
Double-click
you're like, oh
the
wait, no,
playhead to deselect.
I'm not as unsuccessful as I thought.
Next,
I
we'll
was.
look at the clip
So-
bin in the library. The clip
Something
bin
else
holds
I wanted to bring up,
recordings,
because
audio
questions always
files,
come, and I
images,
didn't
title
mention this
slides
last
being
week because
used
I
in the
wanted to give you
project you're
time
currently working on.
to start your writing
The
log and
library
really
stores video
see what
clips,
that looks like. But
intros,
something that always
callouts,
comes up, and
title
I asked the
slides,
question.
and other media
I
assets
actually
you
met
want
with
to
Dr.
use from
Goodson
project to
yesterday,
project.
and
It
I
is
repeatedly asked
pre-populated
her,
with
what can go on my
professional
writing log?
content you can
Like,
use
what does
in
that
your
mean?
videos.
Because I'm not going to
can
be
download
sitting
more media
down
from our website by
writing
clicking this
papers
link.
every day of
You'll
my
find
life.
a lot more music,
And the thing about
callouts,
your
and
writing log
animated
is
titles to
it's
use in
truly
your
for you.
projects. And it's
So
all
you
free.
use it the way
Once you find something you
need
like
it.
this
So if
callout,
you're
for
just filling
example,
things in
just
because
drag
you're like,
it
oh,
to
I
a
have to
track
fill
on the
something in this
timeline
slot,
and resize and reposition
then that's
it
not
as
really helping you
needed.
be productive. But it can be anything that's
Double-click
adding
the
to your
callout
writing.
on the canvas to
So it
open
can
the
be
callouts
annotating
tab
articles
and edit
as
the
you're
text,
reading and taking
or
notes
change
for
any of the
research
text
that you're doing.
properties like
It
color
can
or
be
size.
dumping ideas on something that you had where you're like, okay,
can find a
I
number
sat
of
in
other
that
callouts
class,
to use
I
in
thought
your
about
projects
this,
by
let me
expanding
write
the
this out
shapes
real
menu.
quick, or notes you took in class that are related to something you're
You've
going to be
probably
writing or
noticed the
something
video
you're going to be
zooming
working
in and
on.
out at times. For
It
example,
can
here when
be
it's zooming into
collaboration
the
that you
timeline.
do with others.
To learn
Like I'm
more
in a
about
grant
adding
writing
and
class right now,
customizing zoom
and
and pan
it's all
animations to your
online, which
video,
is not my favorite, but
check out the
nonetheless,
other
all
Getting
of the
Started
collaborating we
tutorials on our
do
website.
is through Google Doc.
We've
And
talked about
so
some of the
we
tabs
sit
already,
and we
but be sure
type
to
and we
explore
bust
the
out
others for
ideas and
adding
we
and
fill things in
editing
together.
special
That's
effects.
all writing time. So it
If they
doesn't have to
don't
be
all
literally
show up
you're
as
sitting
tabs,
down
click
and
on
you're
the More
working on a
tab to
paper.
explore others,
Like it can be
like the
anything that's
speech-to-text
going to
capabilities and
add to the
captions,
writing that you're going to
and the
do.
improved quizzing.
Does that make sense?
Also,
The only time that
transitions
can
can now
become a
be dragged
problem
directly
is
to the
if you look
timeline
at your writing
and added
log and
on
you're like,
top of
okay,
clips.
I logged
So we've shown a few ways you can navigate and edit your video. But how do
6
you
hours
get
this week. I
content
did
into
6
your
hours of
video?
writing, so maybe I did an hour
To
a
make
day.
a new screen
Awesome.
recording, click the record
5
to
of
screen
those
button.
hours were me reading articles.
If you
where
already
only
have an
1 hour
audio
was
or
actually
video
anything
recording
that
you'd
had
like to use,
was
click the Import
productive
Media
writing.
button.
If it starts, if the balance
When
starts
you're
to
done
get
with your
off,
video project,
then
you'll need
think
to click
about
the
maybe,
Produce and Share
okay,
button to
I need to
create
add a
shareable
little bit more
video.
time actually writing and
Expand
not
this
so much
menu to
time
see a variety
annotating
of
articles.
presets.
But
We have
as
a
you and
new
I
video
both
player
know,
that
part of
plays back your
academia is
MP4
you
video
can't write
and
without
includes
search.
other interactive
Period.
features.
I mean,
like
no
table
one
of
wants our
contents,
ideas or just
closed
our ideas
captions,
alone. We at least need
quizzes,
some
and
support
even
for our
hotspots.
ideas. So all of that planning
These
that goes
features are
into
available
it
when hosting
is
your
part of
video
it
on
as well. Does that make
TechSmithScreencast.com.
sense?
or the video and
Okay.
player on your own
Any
web
other
server.
questions about writing long?
This player provides playback on
Please start
multiple
doing it. Please
devices
start
with
doing it.
just
Please
one
start doing
video,
it. It really
whether
will
it's a
make
phone,
the biggest
tablet,
difference.
laptop, or desktop
And
computer.
if anything, it makes you feel good.
Well, it's time
at the
for you
end.
to try Camtasia
Um,
Studio for yourself.
The second part
Visit
of
the
writing
content
log,
on
which I
the
didn't bring
timeline.
up
Or
last
better
week,
yet,
but I
create
wanted to
your own.
mention is that
We
I mean,
have
there's
lots of
perks
free
in all of
tutorials on our
this,
website, and
but
I recommend you begin
one
with the
perk
Getting
and something
Started
you should
series.
think about doing
Also, the
is
help file
that
inside Camtasia Studio tells you how to use
when
each of
you,
the
within your
Camtasia
writing
Studio
log,
features and applications.
whether you set goals for yourself, like at the
One
end of the
last
week,
thing.
I'm going to
If you
write
ever want to open
this
this
much
Getting
this
Started
week,
project
or I'm
again
going to
to
write
view or
5
practice
days
with,
this week, or I'm
use
going to
this
write
link
6 days
here.
this week, or I'm going to
Thanks for
increase
watching.
my
We
writing
hope
to
you
where I
enjoyed
write
Camtasia
at least
Studio.
additional more, like 1 more hour this week than I did last week. Celebrate those accomplishments. So give yourself an hour to watch Netflix or whatever, or give yourself time to go buy a Starbucks, or have some sort of, now be careful with food. Food tends to be my motivator, where I'm like, awesome, because my chair and all of the other grad students that she works with, we all meet at Blue Baker on Friday, and we have Friday meetings. So it used to be like, awesome, if I did what I was supposed to during the week, then I'd get a cookie at Blue Baker on Friday. You can't do that every Friday. It's just not good for you. So be careful with food, because food is a great motivator. But little things, celebrate your successes. Celebrate your growth. And things like your writing log, or if you're doing sort of a productivity log, can really help you see your growth, because you need to celebrate your successes and how hard you're working. Otherwise, you get stuck in this, like, I can never have a minute to myself, and I feel guilty if I take time off. Maybe y'all don't do that. I'm bad about it, which don't be like that. It's not good. But celebrate your successes, so keep that in mind, because it's important. Any other questions about anything? Okay, so starting to look at things today. I found, and this is not new, but I included a link to y'all. This went viral in like 1990. It is very old. When it was shared with me, I was like, well, I've never seen it, so I don't know what you consider viral. But regardless, or if things went viral in 1990, maybe they did. But this was an essay that a student wrote to get into college. Now, the thing about it is that he actually did write it to get into college, to get into, I'm trying to remember, I think it was NYU. But it was an attachment to something else. This was not his only part of his application. It was when it was circulated, this was it. This was his application to get an NYU, and he, everyone was so excited, and he changed the way applications were looked at, blah, blah, blah. That's not really true. He actually did a legit application, and then he added this on. But he started writing, and the question was the same old questions you see all the time. So they ask you things like, what's an accomplishment you've realized that's helped define you as a person? They always ask you these broad questions that you're like, how do you want me to answer this? And so he started, and I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but like, I'm a dynamic figure, often seen scaling walls and crushing ice. I've been known to remodel train stations on my lunch breaks, making them more efficient in the area of heat retention. I translate ethnic slurs for Cuban refugees. I write award-winning operas. I manage time efficiently. And he goes on and on and on and on. And doing all these things, I'm an artist. I'm a concrete analyst. I'm a ruthless bookie. And he keeps going, I sleep once a week, but when I do, I sleep in a chair. Just all of this stuff. And the whole point being is that he was trying to create, and obviously when you read this, you're like, yeah, right. But he was trying to create something unique about him that made him stand out. Because colleges receive so many applications, and the process is very, very difficult and competitive. You need something that will make you stand out. You don't want to look like everybody else. And that's kind of, this is not what we're writing. Well, if you write this one day, good for you. If you write things that are not academically based. But that's not our goal. Our goal is not to necessarily be funny in our writing, but our goal should be to write something that's unique and makes us stand out. Now, that doesn't mean just way off the wall or that no one's going to believe what you say, but being able to write in a way that is clear and organized and coherent and truly sends a message and an actual argument that people can look at and understand and justify will set you apart from many of the people that are writing and publishing. I know if y'all are like me, I've read articles where I'm like, what are you saying? What does this mean? How did you get published? And so we've got to be like this guy and find ways to make our writing unique and make it stand out so that people want to read what we write and want to publish us. So it's just kind of goofy and funny, but I liked it. So for our free write today, I want you to think about what resources do you currently use when you're writing. We're looking at resources today because I'm kind of trying to build your toolbox. So what resources do you currently use when you're writing, if you use any? If you do, why are those helpful? And then what other resources do you think you could benefit from? So we're going to go ahead and start. So for 3 minutes, think about what writing resources you use. And try to write for the whole 3 minutes. We're just trying to get our ideas down and get in that process of really just writing. Okay, go ahead and finish up the line you're on, the sentence you're on. Did everybody write down your writing log? You're like, oh yeah, it's a resource. Just kidding. Sorry, I should have told you that one ahead of time. Does anyone have any writing resources that they already use that you can think of? Yeah.
Books.
Good.
So, like, what I do when I'm reading books, if there's like a word I don't know what it is, I'll look it up. And then just, like, that helps me become a better writer because I can use more vocabulary in my writing.
Awesome, perfect. I like that. I don't know if y'all, how much you played on the, looking at my writing log, but I actually have created a tab that's like vocabulary. So as I see things, and I don't do it very often, but every once in a while I'll be reading a book and I'll be like, wow, I wish I was the kind of writer that used that word. And so then if I remember, then I'll go put it on that tab. It's a good idea. Anybody else have any resources you use?
I use this thing called Lucid Chart. It's actually available in the Google Drive. It's super useful for like organizing your ideas. It's basically a way to, it's like the mind maps that we created last semester. And you can actually link to articles. So if I read an article, I can basically write a bunch of thought bubbles like that down, and then if I find another article from that one, I'll branch off of that and then create a link to that one. And so I've got kind of this web of all these papers that I've written or read.
That's awesome. Helps with organization. Anyone use a thesaurus? Ever? So, I always like, if I can't highlight it in Word and hit the thesaurus button, I have to go find it. I did actually buy an actual for real thesaurus the other day. Because sometimes I'm like, there has to be more words to use for this. Surely. I don't know what it is, but something else has to fit in this hole. Awesome. Well, the goal of today is I'm going to try to give you more resources to help you. Some of them you may find beneficial. Some of them you may find a waste of your time, and that's fine. I wanted to give a plethora of things so that you found something that fit for you. And if you already have things that are working for you, continue to use those. There's nothing wrong with that, and it's good for you to kind of get in the habit of using something that works. So, oh, okay, there we go. So we're going to start looking at a couple of them, and I'm going to briefly go through them, again, because I don't want to spend a ton of time, but all of the links are there in case you want to see them yourself. This first one is actually a visual thesaurus, and the idea behind it is so you can kind of see how words link together. Like the example they give you is search, and so hunt and hunting and look up and look for, and so if you have a word that you oftentimes have difficulty figuring out the definition to, you can kind of see how it's related. So like someone give me a word.
Perplexing.
Oh my goodness, you want a word I have to spell? I'm kidding. Perplexing. Now, you'll have a trial forever. So you can use confusing or puzzling. Okay? But if we had put in something possibly more simple, so then confusing has perplexing and puzzling and disorienting. And it also has
Confusing.
I don't think the sound is, no, this sound is muted. But it also has a speaking function, so if you don't know how
Confusing.
to say a word, anyway, I'm
Confusing.
not going to play with it. It's okay. Then why are they moving? Because it's making it exciting and interesting for you. So this is something, and as you get into words, it will give you more and more options to look at things to help you. So this, if you're more of a visual person and you don't want to be reading long lists, this is something that a lot of people find useful. So that's one. The next one is, this is a timer. How many of you use timers when you write? Okay. A timer can be one of the most useful things you ever use. And part of that is because it's so easy when you write to get burnt out. I use my phone, or a lot of times because my calendar is always up, and so my calendar will give me reminders when the next thing comes up. So when my writing time on my calendar is up, it pops you up a little box that's like, tells you what's happening next, and sometimes that's my timer. Because it doesn't go off, but it tells me that, hey, you have 10 minutes until you need to be working on something else. Consider using a timer. There's tons of timers online, but it really, because if not, then you start getting into that, I was only going to write for an hour, but now I looked up and it's 3 hours, and I hate my project, and I don't want to be here, and those kinds of things. So consider using a timer on your phone, or a lot of people, the old kitchen timers. It really will help you because it'll help you stay focused. And when the timer goes off, you truly, and we'll look at this later, but you truly stop, and wherever you are, you either type in a note, like you finish your sentence because you need to finish your thought. But you either put in a comment or you type in a note or however you're working that tells you what to work on next or tells you where to go next. A timer will really help you. So that's one. Well, how long is your role going to last? That's a good question.
I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm just in the mood to write. I'll just write for like a while. And then sometimes I'm just like, I just don't want to write, and then an hour will pass and I get a sentence.
Well, and that's a very good point. When you're on a roll, I mean, if you're really excited and things are really flowing and you have a good point, then don't stop. But don't let it become where it's taking over everything else, so then you're behind on everything else as well. But it's really good for those times when you're like, I don't want to write, and an hour's passed and I've done nothing. But it at least gives you something to look forward to. Like, okay, I only have to do this for 30 minutes. I can do anything for 30 minutes. So then that timer is more of like, awesome, 8 more minutes. So it's something to make you more motivated to continue. Yes, Olga?
I find it feels really good when you're like typing up a sentence and the timer goes off and you're like, I'm still typing, this is awesome.
I'm not sitting here going, is this over yet? Is it over yet? Is it over yet? No, that's awesome.
Yeah, that actually helped me. I did the timer for the first 2 days I did my writing, and I did it for like 20 minutes, and that happened. I don't use it anymore because it was just to kind of like a good kickstart to get in that mood
Yeah.
of like, this
You can
is,
always up the timer.
yeah.
But that's good.
Yeah.
And I'm glad some of y'all are using it and seeing that it's beneficial, because it really, it's based off what's called a Pomodoro method, which we don't do a lot of in here, but we do a little bit. And it's that idea of really staying structured, but doing it in a way that makes you feel good. Like, wow, that went by really fast. You think of it like back when I had time to exercise, when you'd have a really good like exercise class or something where all of a sudden it's over, or you have a really good run and it's over, and you're like, wow, I didn't feel like I was in here very long. As opposed to, I'm not a yoga person, and the few times I tried yoga, it'd be like, I'd watch the clock, and, oh my gosh, I've only been in here 8 minutes. Like, this is not going to function for me. So it does help you. Okay, the next one is Grammarly. Huh,
Love that.
there's no link for that. Who said love that? Awesome. If you have not used Grammarly, it's a fun one to play with. Do what?
So how could you spell
Oh, did I misspell it? Oh, sorry. But what Grammarly does is it literally will allow you to copy and paste your work into it, and it will kind of give you suggestions and edit and stuff with it. Olga, what do you use yours for?
There's the plugin for Chrome, so
Mhm.
it proofreads everything you type online.
Yeah.
So
So it kind of does it for you. It's like a cheat sheet of sorts, but it's really nice to have.
if you're just lazy and don't like putting in commas or capitalizing eyes, also does that.
It will do it for you. So this is a neat one. This, when it first started, it didn't automatically link it into Chrome. This is something that they've added in the last couple of years, but it does make it nice because it's like an extension to spell check of sorts. It's even more advanced. So that's a fun one to play with. Google Voice Typing. Have y'all used Google Voice Typing? Google Voice Typing is something that I didn't even know existed. And I had a professor who is from Japan, and she has a thick accent. And I was working on, we were having to do interviews in her class. And I was like, transcribing sucks. Like, I do not like to transcribe. It takes so much time. It literally gives me a headache. And she was like, well, for things that aren't a big deal, use the Google thing. And I was like, what are you talking about? And so if you go into Google Docs, and you have, this is just I did a test file. If you go to Tools, they have a voice typing option. And you literally, I don't know, this may work, it may not. So, hello? Yeah, I've got to allow it. Hello? My name is Wendy. It's not going to know how to spell my name. So anyway, so you literally, it will type it for you. So if you're someone that has a hard time getting your ideas down on paper, or if it's like, it reminds me of the old school, people used to carry around the little like voice recorder things, and they'd be like, you'd have the authors who were sitting in Paris, and they'd be like, I am, and they'd write their whole book as they're out on whatever. So that's kind of what it reminds me of, because it will literally type what you say. And again, it's not perfect. Capitalization and stuff, you can play with it. It's a little more like Siri, where you can be like, period, or you can say capital A, and sometimes but that is a neat one if you just want to get ideas down, or if you're interviewing with someone and you don't want to have to completely transcribe everything that they're doing. It's not fail-safe, But I was impressed because my professor that showed me, I thought, there's no way that's going to work. Her accent is so thick. There's no way it's going to pick it up. And it did about as good as it does with me. Now, I speak quite quickly, as y'all have learned, but that's a neat one. So it's kind of a neat one to play with.
How about with like specific, kind of more discipline-specific words and stuff? Does it actually pick that stuff up or no?
A lot of them it does. Obviously, it won't do numbers or those kinds of things if you have any kind of math or problems. But many times it will pick up, as long as it's not something that is just very, very rare or very, very like that you would have a hard time finding normally. It picks up a lot of things that I was surprised, because I had an engineering friend who was playing with it because he was like, it's not going to get whatever, and he started talking and he was impressed with how many of the words it was actually picking up. So I think Google is constantly adding to it, which is nice.
Well, it's based on machine learning, the output of Blue, so.
Yeah, so it goes with that. The next one is Writer's Diet. And Writer's Diet does a couple of things. Let me have it pick up. But the main thing is that it gives you ideas. Excuse me. Okay. It gives you ideas, but it also is a blog, and it's also a lot of different resources to help you with your academic writing. Helen Sword is an author, and she's written for many, many years, and so she actually is at Harvard. Oh, she's moved. When did she move? Anyway, she was at Harvard. And so she has provided, this is kind of one place to get together, and you can log in her blog if you want different writing tips and different things that she's done to be successful. So that's just kind of a resource to keep up with in all your spare time when you're reading blogs. Manchester Phrasebook is a really neat one, because what they've done is, and it's totally free, but this was started by a professor. This was started by a professor who realized that a lot of his students were having difficulty coming up with phrases on how to say things. And so he put this together. So like if you want to explain causality, for example, you can go in and he has just listed tons of ways to say things. So one reason why X have declined is that the most likely causes of X are poor diet. And so he's gone on, and there's just tons, like this one doesn't even have as much, but of examples of how you can say things. So if you're like, I don't know how to say this, or I don't know how to make this mean that, then he literally has come up with just tons and tons and tons of ways to say the things that we try to say all the time. Thank you. Where is it? There it is. So if you're ever stuck for words, or you're trying to say something and you can't quite word it to say what you want it to say, then he has tons of ways to, like, how do you describe percentages? How can you explain range? Those things. So this is a great resource that I've used many times, especially if I am working in a different like content area or a different program that I'm not as used to. Then sometimes I need to think about, how do I say this in my non-social science kind of way, which oftentimes is not easy for me. Easy for y'all, not so easy for me. So this is a neat one. Coggle is very similar to what you were talking about with, would you call it a lucid chart? Lucid chart?
Lucid chart.
Lucid chart. I've actually never heard of that. I'm going to play with it. But it's very, very similar idea. The way Coggle works.
Hi, welcome to Coggle. Coggle is
it's
a
mind
great way
mapping.
to understand,
So you can
organize,
create
and
mind
share
maps to get all of your
information on any
ideas
topic
down.
with
It's
colleagues,
totally free. Now
classmates,
there are
or
some
just on your
advanced
own.
features that you have to pay for.
Let's sign
Um,
in and create a new
but
diagram.
It's just an easy way to dump your ideas
Click
or
the
link
central
in
item
things
to edit
that
the
you
title.
have to do. So
I'm
if you
going to
like
use
mind
this
mapping,
diagram
if
to
that's
plan
something
an
that works well
awesome
for
new
you,
business idea.
then this is one way
Use the
to do
plus
it. Some
buttons
people
to
like
add
to just
branches.
get out a big old
You
piece
can
of
add
paper
as
and write
many
it all
as you
out.
need.
the elementary school
Click
teacher
on
in me
text
sometimes
to
still
edit
likes to do
it,
that,
or
but I have
drag an
nowhere to
item
put
to
it.
move it around.
So I
The structure of the
refrain and use the
diagram helps to
computer.
keep your ideas
But this is
organized.
one way to get your ideas
Right-click
out.
on an item to open
My
the
advisor
context
actually
menu.
had me make one of
Here you can
these
change its color,
because my
remove
dissertation
it,
topic
and
was
all sorts of other
getting out of
useful
hand.
things.
And so
After
she
you've
had
added
me
some
map
items,
out
try
everything I
inviting
wanted
someone
to do,
to edit with you.
and ended up with
You'll
like
see the
5
changes
different
appear
arms or
instantly
whatever you
as
want to
they
call
make
it.
them.
And she
And
said
you
you
can
get to pick
discuss your
one, which one
project
you want.
right here in the messages
But I
panel,
can't.
making
And she's
it
like, you've
really
got to
easy
figure it
to
out,
work
pick
on
one.
anything
But it
together.
really made me stop
Your diagrams
and
are saved
realize how
automatically.
my ideas
When you're
were
done,
segmented
click the Coggle logo
and what
in the
I
top
could
left
include
corner to go
and what
back
I
to your
could dump.
homepage,
So
where you'll see everything you've created
So that's
so
a
far.
good one if you like to
Log in.
mind map. Just some other things. Power, which is the entire, foundation behind what we're doing, is a free service to you on campus. And you're getting a lot of the power resources here, but if you ever want a one-on-one consultation, you're welcome to call me, but you're also welcome to go in. We have lots of consultants, and something to keep in mind, Power is not an editing service, and I'm not going to teach you really how to edit here, because you can go online and say, what a comma usage, like that's not, this is not freshman comp, that's not the point of what we're doing. And Power doesn't do that either. But you can go in, we have like 30 consultants at this point, and you can sign up for Power Hours, where you literally go in, and mine's not up here yet because I just put in my new hours last night, but it will be here. And you can pick somebody, and you're like, okay, so I have Thursday afternoons free. Well, Rama and and Zhang can both meet Thursday afternoons. And so you could pick a time and schedule a time with them. Zhang, who's currently in China, by the way, does hers by Skype. So some of them are Skype, some of them in person. Depends on what you like more, because some people are like, I want to do this from my couch. So if you ever want more one-on-one services, Power is there. So that is another resource. Do we have time? Yeah, we have a little more time. Couple more. Pro Writing Aid is an editing tool. So if you're looking for editing, that is what Pro Writing does. It will help edit your papers. Okay. So that is one that is helpful. OneLook is a reverse dictionary. And so a lot of times you can kind of do things in reverse. Like this gives you some examples. Like you can do just a plain old dictionary, but can also help you look at, okay, I kind of know what the word is, but I can't remember what it's called. Or if you are looking at, I want something that has to do with sports, or I want something that has to do with winter, or I want something that has to do with whatever, but you can't, you have times where you're like, I can't really think of the word, but I know it sounds like this, or I know it means this. You can type that into here, and it will give you things that relate to it. So it kind of does multiple looks at things. And then the last one I already showed you is an online stopwatch. So any questions about resources? There are thousands of more, but I've already bored you enough with resources, so I'm not giving you more. And the last thing I want to show you, and this is in our shared drive, which Olga brought up a very good point, and it's totally an oversight on my part. I'm going to go in and change the name of our folder to Writing Community instead of Learning Community, so you don't have 2 Learning Community folders. Sorry, my bad. But in there is this article template, and this is not mine, this is Dr. Goodson's. She put this together a couple of years ago because what she was realizing is that people were trying to write articles, and they didn't know what it looked like. And so she put together this template that truly walks you through. Like, here's your abstract. It should be about 1 double-spaced page, about 250 words. Okay? And so this is what you should do if it's quantitative. This is what you should do if it's qualitative. And then she goes into mixed methods. Then she goes into your introduction. Your introduction should be the what and the why of your paper. It should be 2 to 3 double-spaced pages. It should clearly state what. And she literally goes through step by step and gives you tips. This should be what's in your introduction. So here's an idea for your theoretical framework, or if you're quantitative, if you're qualitative. So she literally goes through each section. This is what your method section should contain. She's trying to make it as easy as possible for every section of your paper. So if you're in a situation where you're like, I don't really know what to put in my results section, I don't know what my conclusion should look like, this is a great resource to help you through that, to help you go, okay, this will work. And we're going to be isolating and breaking each one of these sections down through these sessions to help you write introductions and help you write conclusions and all, because methodology tends to be a little easier because you're like, I know what I did. I already did all that work. Thank goodness it's done. But some parts are more difficult than others, so we're going to actually be walking through each part of the paper. But this is if you have something due like in the next week. Hopefully you don't. But if you do, this kind of gives you some things to begin with. Okay, so that was it. Any questions on resources?
Yeah, I have one.
Yes.
With the power writing sessions, what if it's maybe kind of a silly question? If it's
No.
not like writing, editing, what do you actually do during a power session? Like, what would I bring to one?
To a power session, you bring 2 to 3 pages of something you're working on. So it can be an assignment for class. It can be if you're working on something that's your research, that maybe you're doing an article that's not related to that, something you're working on with other people. It can be something totally not at all related to academia and just work that you're thinking is fun. And so you bring that in, and generally what happens is we sit down with you, or whoever you pick sits down with you and starts by reading it. Now I'm going to tell you they're going to read it out loud to you. And if you don't like that, they're going to have you read it out loud. But don't let that be a deterrent. Because if you've never read your stuff out loud, it is awesome. Well, it's not really awesome, but it is awesome because you'll read things and you'll be like, wow, that's not what I meant to say. So when I have a power consultation, I sit down with a person, I introduce myself, I ask them if I can read their paper out loud to them. I've never had anyone tell me no. So most people are like, okay. And then I read out loud. And I generally read, it depends, about a paragraph at a time. And as I read the paragraph, I say, okay, from reading this, this is what I think you're trying to say. And if I get what you're trying to say, then you're good. A lot of times people go, that's not what I meant. I wanted it to say this. And I'm like, okay, awesome. How can we make it say that? And then I work with them to say, okay, you want this first paragraph to be about this. It's actually about these 3 things. How can we consolidate that? So it's more about making your writing clear, making your writing organized, and making sure your introduction is actually an introduction and your conclusion is actually a conclusion. So it's all of the parts of writing, but I'm not going to sit down and go, you spelled that word wrong. That's not where you use a comma. I will help with that a little bit, but it's more like, okay, this paragraph is way too long. What can we do to shorten this? What can we do to make this where your reader will understand it more? So it's more about the format and less about the editing. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other resource questions? Awesome. Okay, we're actually starting to write next week. So write every day. Make sure you write every day. Keep adding to your time if you can. Schedule it in your calendar. Find blocks of time. Even if it can't be the same day, find blocks of time. Keep logging. If for some reason you didn't log last week, because I don't want to know, but keep logging, start a log. It will really, really help you. If you're having a hard time logging, if you see anything going on during the week, email me, ask me. Go, hey, this isn't working. What can I do? We can definitely figure out something. For next week, though, I want you to bring one writing assignment that you're going to have due this semester. So hopefully everybody has a class that you at least have a paper. You don't have any?
No, actually, I like that this semester.
Awesome. But then think of something. Writing you'll be doing for your dissertation, writing you'll be doing for your proposal, something. You don't have to bring any writing. Bring the guidelines because we're going to start looking at how you plan that so we're not waiting till last minute. Okay? Any other questions? Yes?
What if there's a 5 line required?
Awesome. We'll work on that too.
Does it have to be a hard copy?
No, you can bring electronic. Whatever you want. Grab snacks. I brought y'all, these are my all-time favorite pencils ever. So if you need a new pencil, please help yourself. And I will see you next week.
How many of you are going to the coffee session? Like now?
Thanks.
Sure.
It's a lot easier than that class.
Really
Yeah, it's annoying.